A top tech CEO in Silicon Valley announced his company's quarterly results in flawless English, then effortlessly switched to Tamil to call his mother in Chennai. A British politician gave a powerful speech on national identity while wearing a sari, a gift from her Indian constituents. At the same time, in a boardroom in Dubai, a business deal for millions was finalized with a handshake and the words, "Namaste, my friend." You might think these are just random moments, but what if they aren't? What if this is a deliberate strategy? Here's the part that might genuinely surprise you. There are 9 countries around the world that are just hosting Indians. They are subtly yet powerfully claiming them as their own, not through force, not through official politics, but through something much deeper. By the time you finish this, you might see why some experts believe this could completely change the very idea of what nationality means. Just last week, the Prime Minister of a small island nation stood before the United Nations and stated that his country's most valuable export wasn't sugar or tourism, but the Indian spirit flowing through his people. The room grew quiet. Diplomats shifted uncomfortably, and India's representative at the meeting simply smiled. What's happening isn't just about immigration numbers or a cultural presence. It's about a worldwide event so unusual that political scientists are still figuring out how to describe it. These are countries looking at their people of Indian origin and saying, "You aren't outsiders here, you are us." The statistics alone will astound you. Across these 9 countries, more than 32 million people of Indian origin live and succeed. But here's the key part. Many of them are no longer seen as Indians by their adopted nations. They are seen as locals, as native-born citizens, as vital parts of the social structure. When people think of the United States absorbing Indians, they often picture billionaire CEOs and Fortune 500 leaders. Sundar Pichai runs Google. Satya Nadella leads Microsoft. Shantanu Narayan controls Adobe. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. Here is what is rarely talked about. In certain neighborhoods of Silicon Valley, Indian festivals have basically become public holidays. They aren't officially on the calendar, but try asking a major tech company to operate at full capacity during Diwali. Entire systems slow down. Take a walk through Fremont, California, and you'll find 2nd and 3rd generation Indian Americans speaking fluent Gujarati or Tamil with their grandparents, whose families arrived decades ago. The US immigration system itself has a unique program called the National Interest Waiver, and guess who benefits from it a lot more than others? Indians. The American government has essentially created a pathway that says, "We need you so much that we will bend our rules." In just the past year, more than 200,000 Indians received some form of permanent residency. That isn't just immigration, that's absorption. America isn't just welcoming Indians, it is deliberately collecting them. Britain once spent 200 years ruling India, taking its resources, wealth, and people. Jump forward to today, and Britain is doing something their colonial ancestors never could have imagined. They are embracing Indians as British. Rishi Sunak rose to become Prime Minister. Priti Patel shaped immigration policy. Sajid Javid was in charge of the Treasury. But look beyond the headlines. If you walk into a British classroom today, you might see Indian history being presented as British history. The 1857 rebellion is no longer only called a mutiny, it's now referred to as the First War of Indian Independence in textbooks. The British Museum's most visited galleries are now filled with Indian artifacts presented as shared cultural heritage. Curry is no longer a foreign import in Britain. It has been declared a national dish. When a country that once thought Indian spices were exotic now calls Indian food a central part of its identity, you know a major change has happened. If those facts are surprising, the next one will push you even further, because the story of the UAE changes how we think about the Middle East. In the United Arab Emirates, Indians are not just a minority. In many ways, they are the population itself. Almost 1 in 3 people living there has Indian roots. That's not a small number, that's the center of the population. The UAE has gone so far as to create specific systems to help them, legal frameworks for family issues, school curricula based on Indian models, and business practices that follow Indian standards. In many ways, it has built a parallel India within its borders. Dubai's Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid once said openly that Indians are not guests, but partners in building the nation. That's not just a polite way of speaking, it's a statement of ownership. Laws now let Indians buy property, run companies, and educate their children in their own languages more easily than in some parts of India. The UAE isn't just passively hosting Indians, it is actively competing with India to attract and keep them. Saudi Arabia's relationship with Indians goes beyond just business and enters sacred territory. For countless Indian Muslims, Saudi Arabia isn't just another country. It is the spiritual heart of their world. Recognizing this, Saudi Arabia created visa categories specifically for Indian pilgrims, not just for Hajj, but for year-round religious visits. Entire city areas have been designed with Indian religious practices in mind. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman recently made a remark that surprised diplomatic circles. He said, Indian Muslims visiting holy sites weren't foreigners. They were returning home. For a future king to describe Indians like this goes far beyond just being friendly. It suggests adoption. Canada, on the other hand, has woven Indian integration into its very brand. Diversity is our strength isn't just a saying there, it's the nation's guiding principle, and Indians are at the core of that plan. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau doesn't just visit India, he has been seen performing Bollywood dances while wearing traditional Indian clothes. When the leader of a G7 nation shows off your culture so publicly, it's not just appreciation, it's an act of claiming it as their own. Canada's immigration policy itself seems to be designed with Indians in mind. The Express Entry program rewards English skills, education, and work experience, all areas where Indians are top performers globally. Cities like Brampton and Surrey now have Canadian-born politicians giving speeches in Punjabi, promising to protect Sikh religious freedoms and treating Indian festivals as Canadian traditions. Canada has not only welcomed Indians, it has reshaped its national identity around their presence. South Africa's connections to Indians are deep, complicated, and life-changing. Indians were brought there as indentured labourers under British rule, then faced discrimination during the apartheid era. Yet they stayed, adapted, and became a permanent part of the nation's soul. Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of satyagraha, or non-violent resistance, was not born in India but in South Africa, where he fought against injustice as a young lawyer. Today, when South Africans celebrate Gandhi, they don't see him as an external leader but as a revolutionary shaped on their land. The South African government has even declared Indians a founding community, not a minority group. This kind of language is remarkable. When a nation calls you a founder instead of a migrant, it changes your place in its history. Fiji is another remarkable case. Almost 40% of its people are of Indian descent. When the British first brought Indians as labourers in the 1870s, they were never meant to stay. They were not supposed to form communities, build lives, or shape the nation. But they did. Today, Indo-Fijians don't just live in Fiji, they define it. Diwali is a national holiday. Hindi has been given the status of an official language. If you turn on a Fijian radio, you might hear Indian classical music. While political tensions have sometimes come up between ethnic Fijians and Indo-Fijians, culturally they have blended into a shared identity. Fiji's tourism industry even promotes itself using Indian dance, Indian flavors, and Indian warmth. What they are selling to the world is India, but with a Fijian label. If there's one nation that shows the complete absorption of Indian heritage, it's Mauritius. Over 65% of its people can trace their family back to India. Yet, they don't call themselves Indians in Mauritius. They proudly identify as Mauritians with Indian souls. This island has done something unique. It has combined Indian traditions into its national identity, without losing its own special character. In Mauritius, Indian languages are spoken in parliament. Public temples honor Indian gods. Indian festivals are part of the national calendar, and yet the identity remains proudly Mauritian. The Prime Minister once said words that were heard in both countries: Mauritius is not India's colony. India is our motherland. That isn't diplomatic politeness. That is emotional ownership. In Trinidad and Tobago, a cultural blend that feels like magic has happened. Indian traditions have not only survived over time, they have grown and mixed into the Caribbean identity. Indian food is eaten as local food, Indian music fills the streets during festivals, and Indian religious practices are celebrated openly. Over many generations, Indian culture has become so connected with the national fabric that to outsiders, it feels impossible to separate it from the island's identity itself. Here too, the story is not just about migration. It's the story of claiming a culture where what was once foreign is now native. It has changed into something uniquely Caribbean while still being clearly Indian. Listen to chutney music and you'll hear Indian classical melodies mixed with Caribbean rhythms. Try the food and you'll find curries spicier than anything in Delhi served with rotis softer than anything in Mumbai. Watch Carnival and you'll see Indian dancers moving in sync with steel drum bands. Trinidadians of Indian origin don't feel caught between two identities. They've created a third culture that is at the same time Indian and Caribbean. Former Prime Minister Kamla Persad Bissessa once said, "We are not Indians in Trinidad. We are Trinidadian Indians." And that makes us something the world has never seen before. That isn't identity confusion, that is identity innovation. Looking across all 9 countries, a clear pattern appears. It's something that is rarely spoken about openly but is quietly understood everywhere. These nations aren't claiming Indians randomly. They are carefully, even strategically, claiming them because Indians bring qualities that modern societies need. Education, business ownership, cultural richness, and global connections. Every one of these countries has gained a lot from its Indian community. The UAE's economy depends on Indian investment and labor. Britain's National Health Service is supported by Indian doctors. America's technology sector runs on Indian innovation. Canada's immigration strategy is fueled by Indian applicants. Think about numbers most governments would rather keep hidden. The global Indian community sends more than 100 billion back to India each year. But here's what's even more surprising. They spend almost 3 times that amount in the countries they now call home. The UAE economy would fall apart without the spending power of Indians. British curry houses now employ more workers than the steel industry. American tech stock prices change depending on approvals of Indian H-1B visas. These nations are not simply embracing Indians socially or culturally, they are attaching their economies to them. Yet here is the twist many people miss. India is claiming them back through initiatives like the Overseas Citizen of India card, special investment plans for non-resident Indians, and global cultural programs. India is basically saying, you may live abroad, but you still belong here. What we are watching is nothing less than a global struggle for Indian loyalty, and the stakes are huge. Political thinkers are quietly talking about something radical, that we may be seeing the rise of the world's first truly global ethnicity. Indians across 9 countries speaking dozens of languages and practicing many faiths, yet staying culturally connected in a way that goes beyond geography. Children of Indian families in Canada are learning Bharatanatyam. Grandchildren of Indians in Mauritius are studying Sanskrit. 3rd-generation Indo-Trinidadians are making pilgrimages to Indian temples. This isn't cultural weakening, it's cultural multiplication. Each generation adds new influences while staying connected to an ancient root. Now comes a key fact that links everything. The truth is this: we aren't looking at 9 separate Indian communities. What we are seeing are 9 examples of one huge global Indian civilization. These countries are not claiming different groups of Indians. They are each claiming a piece of the same varied Indian identity. America claims Indian innovation. Britain embraces Indian intelligence. The UAE celebrates Indian business spirit. Saudi Arabia highlights Indian spirituality. Canada praises Indian multiculturalism. South Africa honors Indian toughness. Fiji values Indian adaptability. Mauritius nurtures Indian blending. Trinidad uplifts Indian creativity. Together, they form the complete picture of what India means to the modern world. But here's the final twist that will leave you speechless. India itself has started to claim these nations in return, not through political power or economic dominance, but through cultural pull. Watch Indian films today, and you'll find stories set in Canada, the UK, and the US. Listen to modern Indian music, and you'll hear echoes of Caribbean beats and Middle Eastern tones. Go into an Indian restaurant, and you'll taste dishes that mix flavors from Africa, Europe, and Asia into something that could exist nowhere else. The shocking truth is not just that 9 nations are claiming Indians. The greater discovery is that Indians, through pure cultural momentum, have embedded themselves into these societies so deeply that removing them would leave those nations fundamentally changed. This is colonization flipped on its head. Not colonization by force, but by integration so complete that the host nations cannot function without their Indian communities. Consider this: the British spent 200 years trying to make Indians British. Today, Indians have made Britain partly Indian, and Britain is fine with it. The United States once greatly restricted Indian immigration. Now, it competes globally to attract Indian talent, with its economy relying on their contributions. The UAE was once a group of desert trading towns. Today, it's a global leader powered by Indian energy, ambition, and money. These 9 countries aren't just passively accepting Indians, they are actively competing with each other to win their loyalty. Canada promises smoother immigration than the US. The UAE offers business freedom Britain cannot match. Mauritius provides cultural preservation that even India sometimes struggles with. Each of these countries is not just hosting Indians, they are bidding for them. And Indians, in turn, are choosing their loyalty based on opportunity, respect, and cultural acceptance. What has appeared is unheard of. A global auction for talent, identity, and loyalty with Indians as the prize everyone wants. This situation forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. If Indians can belong to 9 different nations while still holding on to their Indian identity, then what does nationality even mean anymore? If someone can be fully Canadian, proudly Indian, and completely global all at once, how do we define citizenship? Some experts suggest this is the beginning of a post-national identity. Others argue we are returning to older forms of belonging that were based on shared culture rather than political borders. But what's happening with Indians is unique. They've managed to keep their cultural roots while fully integrating into their new homelands. They haven't completely become part of the new culture, nor have they stayed separate. They've created something new, cultural ambassadorship. They show what it means to be loyal to your host country while loving your heritage. They show how to be global without being cold, how to be multicultural without conflict. And here is the deeper revelation. These 9 nations aren't embracing Indians only because of their professional successes. They are embracing them because Indians have figured out the secret of modern identity. They've proven that identity doesn't have to be one thing. Belonging doesn't have to be exclusive. Loyalty can be both deep and wide. Indians have shown that it is possible to respect one's past while building a global future. As we look to the years ahead, this trend is only getting faster. More nations are actively creating policies to attract Indians. More Indians are choosing to spread across continents. More cultures are adjusting to welcome Indian ways of life. What we are seeing isn't just 9 countries claiming Indians. It's the creation of a new kind of human community that goes beyond borders but stays connected to cultural roots. Children being raised in these environments will be the first generation in human history to grow up truly global while remaining genuinely grounded. They will speak several languages naturally, celebrate festivals from different continents, and see home not as one place but as a shared global idea. This is bigger than migration or economics. It's the birth of a new model of identity that could change human society in the coming decades. The 9 nations embracing Indians aren't just making cultural statements. They are making bets on the direction of civilization itself. And if the evidence so far is any guide, those bets are paying off handsomely. So the next time you see an Indian excelling in Silicon Valley, governing in London, creating in Dubai, or innovating in Toronto, remember you're not just seeing personal success stories, you're seeing the plan for the future of human belonging being written right in front of your eyes. And that future looks very Indian, very global, and very hopeful.